Hello and welcome to this demo. This is an optional demo where I'm going to show some tips and tricks in developing Ansible playbooks using an IDE. If you are very comfortable working with the VI editor, then by all means continue to do so. But when you start working with large number of files and playbooks, it may become a bit difficult to work in the CLI. I personally am an IDE person. I like to use a good IDE for development purposes, as it helps me move around multiple files easily as well as integrate with version control systems like GitHub, etc. In this demo, I'm going to show how to set up a development environment using the free IDE tool called Atom, as well as how to develop locally and sync your files remotely to an Ansible controller machine. So let's dive into it. So first I'm going to download the IDE, the Atom IDE, and for that go to atom.io. When you go to this landing page, you will have the option to download the version of Atom automatically based on your operating system. In my case, I'm using Windows, so I download the setup file for Windows. Once downloaded, go through the installation process, which is pretty straightforward. And you'll have the Atom IDE installed. Once installed, open the Atom IDE, and this is the IDE interface. I'm going to open a new project, so I'm going to click on Open Project, and I have a folder created in my D drive called Ansible Demos-Exercises. So I'm going to select the folder, and so it opens the folder in my current window. Now, on my Ansible controller, I will also create a similar folder. So under my home directory, I'm going to create a folder called Ansible-Demos-Exercises. So my goal is to develop Ansible playbooks locally on my Windows machine on the IDE, and then move them to the Ansible controller machine once I'm done with the development to execute the playbooks. So I have a folder created locally as well as a folder created remotely. In the local folder, I'm going to further create another folder. So I'm going to create a folder for each of the exercise. I'm going to name the first one as exercise-0-ping test. So the first exercise that I'm going to do is a ping test. Under that, I'm going to create a new file. I will call that inventory.txt. And we've already created an inventory file earlier in one of the earlier demos, so I'm just going to pick that. So on my Ansible controller machine, I'm going to print the contents of the inventory file I created earlier. I'm going to copy those contents and place it in this file. So I have my inventory file ready. I will now create a playbook. I will call that playbook-pingtest.yaml. And inside this playbook, I'm going to create my new play. So the first play is going to be named check connectivity to target servers. And then the tasks are going to be, the first task is going to be named as a ping test, and it's going to use the ping module. So that's a very simple playbook right there. Now, if you see, from the IDE, I expect it to warn me whenever there's an error in the syntax or the structure of my YAML based playbook. In this case, I'm going to make an error purposefully in the structure of my YAML file. So I'm going to move the indentation of the ping line to the left a little bit. So this is actually wrong. And the way you test it is you can actually copy the contents of your playbook. And there's a site called yamllint.com. So if you go to this site and copy the contents of your playbook and paste it there and click on Go, it's actually going to do a quick check and tell you that there's something wrong. So there's something wrong around line 4 or line 5. Well, this is one way to do it. But there's an easier way, a better way to do it, that's using a package for the Atom IDE. So if you go to Google and search atom followed by YAML lint, you will come across this package called linter-js-YAML. This is the package that does the YAML validation for us, and you can install it using this command called apm install linter-js-YAML. This does not come pre-installed in the Atom IDE, so you have to install it separately. So I'm going to open a command prompt. This is on my local machine where the Atom IDE is installed, and then I'm going to run the command apm install linter-js-YAML. It's going to take some time for it to pull down the package and install it. Okay, so the installation is complete. Once you install any package, remember to restart your IDE. So I'm going to close my IDE and I'm going to start it again. Okay, so I've opened my IDE, and as you can see, automatically it now tells me or points me to line number 5 and says that there's an error, and the error message is bad indentation of a mapping entry. So it's identified that the indentation on this particular line is incorrect, and I have to move it to the right a little bit. And when I indent it correctly, the error message is gone. So this is very useful for me. Going forward, I will rely on this to verify that the YAML files or playbooks that I develop are in the right structure. And you can use this too while developing playbook in the coding exercises section. You may come across cases where your YAML file structure is incorrect, so you can use either the YAML lint site or this IDE to test your files. Okay, so I'm going to save that file. Now I'm going to go to my Ansible controller machine, and I will now move the files there. So basically I'm going to create these files that I created in the IDE. First, to start with the inventory file, I'll copy the contents and paste it here. Similarly, I'm going to create the Ansible playbook file, but there's something that I forgot in my playbook, which is the hosts entry. So I'm going to add the host entry before I copy the contents. And then I'm going to copy the contents, create a new file for playbook on my Ansible controller, and paste the contents there. I will now run the playbook by using the Ansible playbook command and by specifying the playbook name followed by the inventory file. And as you can see, it runs successfully. What I just did was manually copy these files over, but that's not going to work well all the time. When I keep modifying the files more regularly, and when I work on more number of files, it's going to be a tedious task copying the contents over each time. And so we're going to use another package from Atom to fix that issue. Now remember, in my case, I'm using a Windows system with Atom IDE on it, and then I'm trying to move my files to the Ansible controller machine, which is Linux and remote, and that is remote. In your case, if you're using the Linux system, and if Ansible controller happens to be the same Linux system that you were on, then you don't really need this functionality of the remote sync. You could just install Atom IDE on your Ansible controller, and if you're comfortable working that way, you don't really need to do this. But even if you're on a Linux system, and say for example your Ansible controller happens to be a remote system in your lab environment or on VirtualBox, you could still use this remote sync package to sync your local files to the Ansible controller machine. So it's useful either ways. It's useful when your IDE is on your local workstation and your Ansible controller is a remote system. So if you Google Atom and remote sync, you'll come across this Atom package. It's called remote sync package, and you can browse through the documentation to see all of its features and its support, etc. So under the installation section, find the command to run to install the package. It's called apm install remote-sync. So I'm going to open my command prompt and run the command to install the remote sync package. Once it's completed successfully, close your IDE and open it again. And once it's back up, if you now right click your root folder, your project folder, you will see a new option called remote sync, and under that you have a configure option. So that's what you should do first. You need to configure the remote sync. This opens up a form, and here you're going to fill information about your remote system. In our case, it happens to be Ansible controller, so I'm going to put in the information about the Ansible controller. The host name, port is 22. The target directory, where do we want to copy the files to? So I'm going to use the same directory that I created earlier, which is ansible-demos-exercises. So put the complete path. The username to connect with, that's the OS boxes. And I'm going to give it a password, which is the osboxes.org password. I'm going to check the option called upload on save. That way, every time I make a change to my file and save it, it automatically gets updated. Okay, so I now have my remote sync configured for my project. So if I now right click my root project folder and go into remote sync, I can see the option for upload folder. You will see this option all the time, but remember to first configure it before you start using it. So if you've already configured, I'm now going to click on upload folder, and it's going to upload each file in my folder to the Ansible controller machine. And I can see the logs here in the bottom right corner. If I go to my Ansible controller machine and list the contents, I can see the new folder here. There are files that I manually created earlier. I'm just going to get rid of them. And if I now go into the new folder, I can see the files that I created in my IDE. I can now run the Ansible playbook command with these files, and the result is a success. Now I'm going to demo another exercise for copying a file. So I'm going to create a new folder called exercise-1-copy file, and in this folder again I'm going to copy the inventory file. So I'm going to copy the file inventory file from the previous exercise and paste it here, and in this folder I'm going to create a new file for a new playbook, and I will name it as playbook-copyfile.yaml. In this file I'm now going to create or develop my playbook. So the first play is going to be named copy file to target servers, and the play is for all hosts. And then I'll specify the tasks. The first task is going to be named copy file, and this is where I need some help. So I need to know what the copy module does, what are its properties, how to use it. And this is where I go to the Ansible documentation page, look up for the copy module, and once I find the copy modules, it says that it is a module that copies a file from local or remote machine to a location on the remote machine. So that's exactly what I want. When I scroll down into the example section, I see how to use the modules. So all I really need is the source and destination. So I just need those two properties. So the module name is going to be copy, and it has two properties under it called src and destination, source and destination. So what is the source? What is the file that I want to copy from my Ansible controller to the target servers? Well, let's go and get that created. So I go into my Ansible controller, and I'm going to create a new file at temp testfile.txt. I will add some sample content to this file. I'm going to copy the location of the file and place it under the src section. Now, before I execute the playbook, I want to make sure that the file does not exist on my target machines. So on my target 1 as well as on my target 2, and you can see that there's no such file or directory, which is great. But the file does exist on my controller machine. Now in the IDE, I'm going to specify the destination. Again, I'm going to give the same path. So I want the file to be copied to the same path on my controller, on my target servers. I will save that. Okay, so if I now go back to one directory and go in, I can see that there's a new directory, which is the directory that I created on my IDE. And if I list its contents, I can see the playbook that I just created, but I do not see the inventory file. Now the reason for that is I copied over the inventory file from the previous folder, and when you do a copy, the remote sync package does not really upload it. You can either make a change to the inventory file and save it, and then it will upload the file automatically, or in this case you could just go to right-click the file, go to remote sync and select upload file option. So now I have both the files here. I will now run the Ansible playbook command to execute the playbook, specify the playbook name and the inventory, and we'll wait for it to finish execution. Now as you can see under the task section, it says changed for both target 1 and target 2. So that basically means the files were not there and it had to copy the files over. If I go to my target 1 server, I can see that the file is now there, the same on target 2. So the file has been copied successfully to the target servers. If I now execute the playbook again, what would happen? Would it copy the files? Would it overwrite it? Or just leave it as it is because the files were there? As you can see, the output this time says OK. So that really means that the files were already there, and then it didn't have to do everything is OK, and it didn't have to make a change or copy the files. So that's the difference between the first and the second execution. The first, it says changed. In the second execution, it says OK. So that's the concept of idempotency in Ansible. Ansible only makes a change if it has to. If it's already in the same state, then it doesn't really make the change. So we can really run the Ansible playbook as many times as we want. It's only going to make a change when there is a need. To run another test, what we'll do is we'll just go to the Ansible target 2 server, and we'll remove the file from that server. So we're only removing the file from target 2, and we'll run the playbook now. And if you look at the result, it says it's OK for target 1, but it had to make a change for target 2. So the file was not there for target 2, so it copied the file. Well, that's it for this demo. Thank you for your time, and I will see you in the next lecture.